Hello and welcome to Lisa Loves, and today I wanted to cover for you the story of Alonzo Brooks. I think this is very apt right now given the Black Lives Matter movement. It's something obviously we should be talking about anyway, but I wanted to specifically focus on this case at this time. So interest in this case has recently been reignited. The case is from 2004, but Netflix have released a documentary by the name of Unsolved Mysteries on just July 1st, 2020, just gone. And thankfully this case has actually just been reopened this past few days. It had previously been closed, and when you hear details of the case you will be amazed that it has been closed at all. So Alonzo Brooks was the youngest of 5 children of Maria Ramirez and Billy Brooks Sr. He very much was close to his parents, who sadly divorced. He initially went to live with his dad after the divorce in Topeka, Kansas. I apologise if that pronunciation is terrible, I know it probably is. But when he was in his early 20s, he moved back in with his mum in Gardner, Kansas, so obviously not that far a distance. His mum said he was obviously a young man. He was in his early 20s, 23 when he actually passed. But he was the baby of the family and she liked to mother him, as mums do. He was very close to his family. He was very much a homebody. He liked to stay at home, chill with his family, watch TV. He liked sports. He was very popular. He had a lot of friends of differing colours. He never really stuck to one side of society. He very much was an inclusive young man, a very well liked young man, a popular young man, and you would struggle to get anyone to say anything negative about Alonzo, who his friends called him Zoe. That was his nickname. So on April 3rd, 2004, Alonzo, with a group of his friends, travelled south to Cygne in Lynn County to attend a party, not of people that they knew. They must have known someone at the party, but most people there they wouldn't have known. It was a young lad that was supposed to be going off to join the Navy, so they were having a party in his honour. They went down in 2 cars, and by all accounts seemed to be having a fantastic time. Now something about the town that was stated, this is obviously not from my viewpoint, this has been taken from the Netflix documentary. I'm not informed at all, so I'm going with what it said. It said the town was quite a white town, was quite a racist town. Someone of colour in that town did attract stares, did attract unwelcome attention for absolutely no reason other than the colour of their skin. So at the party there were actually said to be 3 young black men there. He was one of the 3. But there were said by other partygoers, and indeed some of Alonzo's friends, they said they heard racial slurs. One of his friends said that he had heard the N-word being uttered on more than one occasion. And at one stage, although Alonzo was having a really good time, he was chatting, he was the type of lad that got on with everyone, and he was having, he was enjoying himself like you would. At one stage, he was seen to be squaring up to another young man at the party. But whatever it was they were arguing about, one of Alonzo's friends got in between and basically diffused the situation, and everything seemed to go on as normal. Later that evening, the second carload of people that came with Alonzo decided to head back home. But this still left the initial friend that had taken Alonzo to the party in his car. He was still there to give Alonzo a lift home. He decides later in that evening that he wants to go and buy some cigarettes. So he leaves in the car and Alonzo says, "Pick me some up too." So he leaves. Taking into consideration all his other friends have gone home, he leaves Alonzo at the party to go and buy some cigarettes. Unfortunately, this friend gets hopelessly lost. He doesn't know the area, he doesn't know where he's going, and he is forced to phone another person he knows at the party, and he says, "Look buddy, I'm lost. Can you tell Lorenzo that I've basically got lost and I'm going home?" Now in the background of this phone call he can hear Lorenzo laughing and making fun of him because he's lost. He seems to be in very good spirits, he seems to be having a really good time. He heads home and he asks this other friend of his, "Can you bring Lorenzo home?" And he heads back off home and doesn't think much more about it. The next day, another of Alonzo's friends calls his house and his mother Maria answers the phone and he asks to speak to Alonzo. He actually said, "Is Alonzo there?" as in, did he come back? The mother says, "Well, yeah, I assume he's in his room," and went to check. And Alonzo's bed had very clearly not been slept in. He hadn't been back, he hadn't returned. So obviously ensues telephone calls from all his friends to find out where he is, what's happened, and no one has an answer. Now this lady, respectfully, I was very surprised that she was as level-headed and calm as she was. In that position as a mother myself, if I found that a group of my son's friends had left him in a party in an area where he didn't know, even without the added problem that there were racial slurs being thrown around and he had a bit of a run-in with one person, I would not be at all happy with those friends. I would be very angry with those friends, actually. They left their friends at that party with people he didn't know in an environment where someone of his skin colour was very clearly not welcome. So news gets to one of Alonzo's very, very oldest friends who lives next door, and he is also, they were like brothers, they grew up like brothers, he was also a young man of colour. He was more to my sort of point of view when he got together with Alonzo's friends, who were all white, that he went to the party with. Why did you leave him there? What were you thinking? He was very angry at these boys, and to be fair, I'm not at all surprised. They travel back down to the house together to see if they can get any answers, and the house is pretty much empty. There's no one there. And they can't understand how it's gone from in full swing of a party one day to the next there not being anyone there or anything there. Alonzo's mother actually obviously calls the police, and initially they don't take it really seriously. He's a young man, but he's an adult, so give it 48 hours, and if he hasn't returned, then get back in contact with us. Now, any mum will tell you they know their own child, and his mother Maria knew that something had happened to Alonzo. He would never, it did not matter where he went, what he did, he always came home to his own bed. He was very much a homebody, very much someone that liked being with his family, didn't like to stay out, he didn't stay with his mates, he wasn't that type of young man. So she knew something was amiss. The boys went down, and unfortunately they couldn't find out really any information at all. So when Alonzo's friends had been down in the area searching, they actually found his trainers and his hat. Now, he had a beanie hat which he was very well known for. He barely took this hat off, he was always wearing it. And his trainers he had tied in a very specific way because he had an ankle injury and he had difficulty walking on that ankle, so he'd strapped it up quite securely with his, I'm assuming, high-rise sneakers to sort of give it a bit of extra support. So for his friends to find his trainers on the road in two completely separate places and his hat, the police were trying to insinuate he was drunk and he'd just run off and he'd maybe fallen asleep somewhere. But for a young man who had a bust ankle to take his shoes off in a strange area and just run off, God only knows where, just did not, with, an injury, did not sound like something that was plausible to the family. After the allotted time passed, the police did start a search in the area. They brought in sniffer dogs, cadaver dogs, there was a helicopter involved, and extensive searches of the area were undertaken to no avail. Unfortunately, nothing of Alonzo was found, and the family were still left wondering, how could he possibly just disappear into thin air? What has happened? The family and the mother asked if they could come and take part in the search, and initially they were declined. They were told to wait to let the police do their job, and it did seem like the police very much were undertaking a very widespread, very, thorough search for Alonzo. So the family did think, well, there's nothing that we can do that they can't, so they left the police to it. So the police search was concluded. It had been around a month since that fateful night where he had disappeared. Now, Alonzo was of African American and Mexican descent, and a lot of people have expressed that they don't feel that the same effort is put into locating these individuals when they go missing, and the family, I don't think, were happy. Although a very extensive police search appeared to have been taking place, they wanted to get in there themselves. They wanted to have a look for him themselves. So at that stage the police did allow them to go down and conduct their own search. So they travel with all the original friends that had been at that party, with his dad. His mum didn't attend, with lots of people from the area that knew Alonzo and wanted to help, wanted to chip in and help find him. They marked out the area opposite from the house, which was like a forested and also like a boggy creek type area, so it was the area of interest, and they commenced their search. And within an hour, I think the documentary actually said just over half an hour, Alonzo's body was discovered. One of the first people on the scene to see Alonzo's body was his father, Billy Brooks Sr., who just was devastated. He said he felt like a punch to the gut. Alonzo was lying tangled on like debris and like twigs and sticks on top of this marshy area. His father said even though it was devastating for him to see his son lying there like that, at least he had an answer as to where Alonzo was. And when he actually discovered the body, he actually said that a day that was very overcast and grey, the sun came out, and he just said it felt like it was his son Alonzo telling him that everything was going to be okay. So obviously the body, we're talking a month, we're talking 4 weeks of decomposition. And at that stage in 2004, the techniques were not available to do as rigorous and as detailed an autopsy as we perhaps would be today. The body was too degraded in order to actually determine a cause of death. The forensic examiner did say that there were no broken bones, that there were no like penetrating wounds, like he hadn't been shot. There was nothing to say that he had been murdered. He said he couldn't rule out murder. He said of course he could have been strangled because there weren't enough tissue there for them to determine if that was the case. But they had to draw up a case of undetermined death. Not murder, not but just undetermined. So this is where the entire investigation just hits a brick wall. The big question is, how could Alonzo's body have been found in such an open, obvious area after such an extensive police search? And what had been suggested is that Alonzo's body was never actually there until after the police search had concluded, that it had been stored somewhere else, and there was suggestion that his body had actually been frozen for a period of time before being dumped back in the area after the police search had taken place. Of course, there was no evidence to suggest this. Again, this was looked at by the forensic pathologist and he could not determine that the body had or had not been frozen. At the time, obviously people talk. Unofficially, people make comments, and the feeling and posts on the internet and on Twitter at the time from La Cygne, where Lorenzo died, was very much that people knew where he was, people knew what happened to him. The inference was that Lorenzo had been kidnapped and tortured and kept when he was killed in a freezer, in someone's freezer. And this seemed to be common knowledge, but obviously this is gossip. This is not something the police can go on. This is something anonymously posted online by someone, like the rumour mill, like, you know, there was no proof of this, but it did seem to be a very commonly held belief that foul play had come past Alonzo. His mother, obviously, who knows him better than anyone, is absolutely convinced foul play happened here. How did her son just wander off into an area without his shoes, without his hat, and die and not be discovered by sniffer dogs, cadaver dogs, helicopters, police, FBI even searched? No one found him, but the family found him within half an hour. Now that, obviously, he could not have been there in the first place. He has to have been moved, he has to have been put there at a later date. Some people may say the police did not conduct the search thoroughly, but it does seem by all accounts that the police search was pretty thorough. When the attendees of the party were interviewed, and to give you an indication of the size of the party, there were hundreds of people interviewed that were at the party. No one seen anything. All of those people were there with Alonzo and no one knew what happened to him. That does not sound to me, even if they're trying to say that he wandered off in a drunken state, no one saw that. No one saw him leave the house. No one's aware of what happened to him. No one knows why he's disappeared. But yet the rumour mill is just going mad behind the scenes. But to the police, no, we don't know what happened to him. We don't know where he went. We don't know how he got like that. Something doesn't quite add up here, does it? So, unbelievably, the police actually close the case. They say there's no evidence of foul play here. There's no evidence Alonzo was murdered. We're not going to look into this any further. Obviously the family are aghast. How, to be honest, I know people are young and people are stupid, but how the mother was ever able to forgive that friend that left him there. The person that said that he would give him a lift, I don't even think was someone that Alonzo knew. It was a mutual friend of the guy that was meant to give him a lift. They just missed each other at the end of the night, and I don't think he felt that sense of responsibility to bring this guy home that he barely knew. That was the responsibility of the guy that took him there, and should have been, and he should have found his way back to that party by hook or by crook. That to me, it just is extremely upsetting, and what that young man has to live with now. So thankfully, Netflix Unsolved Mysteries was released on the 1st of July of this year. I've watched the entire series, and Alonzo's case features within that in one of the episodes, and now the Kansas police have actually reopened the investigation. Hopefully this time they will be able to get some answers, and since quite a while, we're talking 16 years have passed now, hopefully allegiances may have changed, someone may come forward and give information that they didn't feel able to at the time, and we may get to the bottom of what happened to Alonzo Brooks. Obviously right now it is very important that we get these cases out there. Every case is important, but obviously Black Lives Matter and the movement is very to the front of our mind at the moment, and giving exposure to these cases, which it has to be said in a lot of cases do not get the same media attention, police attention in some cases as other cases do. It's very important that we get the word about this out here. This is a current investigation. Now if anyone knows anything, I know most people that watch my videos aren't in the US, but if anyone out there knows anything, any information, even if that is given to the police on an anonymous basis, the family deserves some closure here. They deserve to know what happened to their son, to their brother, to their friend, and this young man deserves an answer to what happened to him. If there are any other cases you would like me to cover, feel free to put those in the comments. If there is any information obviously that I have omitted, feel free to include that below also. Obviously I'm basing what I'm telling to you from that Netflix documentary. I have done some extra reading also, but there obviously could be more information about this case that I'm not aware of, so please feel free to let my viewers and myself know of any of that if you do indeed know any yourself. So thank you for watching. Let me know if there is any cases you would like me to cover, and until next time, over and out from Lisa Lives.